Songs of Solomon, a book from the Bible. Now we have two versions here. We have the King James version. We also have the New International Version. Apart from certain minor changes in translation, most part of these 8 lines that we have to go through are the same. Certain words are different, maybe because both the translated versions came out in two different eras. So obviously there will be a change in the words and the perspective that the translators have translated them. So what we'll be doing is we'll basically go through the meaning of each verse, each line, to understand the basic difference between the two cultures and the two times that these two translations came out. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Both the versions have the same initial title, subtitle, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Now, if you take the first part of the subtitle, the Song of Songs, of course, this is considered as one of the greatest lyrical poetry or poem that the world has initially seen, which appears in the Bible. Now, it is a collection of poetic songs. If the Song of Solomon was not in the Bible, we would discover it as an ancient document, which is completely secular. There are different interpretations of the Song of Solomon's done by people, but nothing in this poem tells us that it has any connection with God or Jesus or church. It appears as a secular poem that talks about the sexual relationship between a man and a woman. Now, the book has different names because different translators have named it differently. Some translations have the Song of Solomon, and it's the same for both King James and the New International Version. Some versions have it as the Song of Songs, and some other versions call it canticles because it is a Latin word for songs. So some versions call this Song of Songs as canticles. Now there are different approaches to the Song of Songs. Some religious people completely avoid this book altogether, while others embrace this book as a great devotion between the God and the church. Some of them embrace this book as a relationship between a man and a woman, husband and a wife, a lover and his love. Now, the early rabbis thought that the book pictures God's love for Israel. Certain other Christian writers saw it as the love between church and Christ. One writer in the 3rd century wrote a 10-volume commentary on the Song of Solomon, telling how the book describes God's love for Christians. So basically, they have all tried to convert this lyrical poem into a text which describes the love between God, man, and church. The Song of Songs, in fact, is the greatest of all songs, and If you look at it from a secular point of view, it focuses on romance, marital love, and it also shows how the Bible has a high regard for the institution of love and marriage. Um, it is later that this was interpreted, or it was given a religious interpretation. Now, this idea is decidedly contrary to the negative view towards marriage that came about in the history of church. Now, in the Council of Nicaea, a proposal was made to prohibit all clergy from living as married, and the council did not approve, but the council did not approve the proposal. And it was Pope Cerisus who commanded that all priests are to live as celibates, or they have to adhere to celibacy. And this later was included to the deacons in the church too. Now, in this time, many people who were ordained as priests were already married. So, this command led to the rule that a married man could not be ordained as a priest unless he and his wife took a vow that they would live as celibates. So that was the, um, that was a small freedom that was given to the priests who were already married. Now, this idea that truly spiritual cannot or should not be married and enjoy sexual love is not based on the Old Testament or the Bible. The Old Testament has no word for a bachelor. In the Old Testament, even a patriarch was married. All priests were married. Every prophet was married except for Jeremiah. So, if you look at this idea of love, romance, and institution of marriage, the Bible or the Old or New Testament was never against it. It was an interpretation that was brought about by the church and the Pope that initiated this idea of the clergy being unmarried. It was only in the prophets in the Bible, it was only Jeremiah who was unmarried because he was commanded by God not to marry. But other than that, the Bible was never against the institution of love, romance, and marriage. Um, in the New Testament, Christ reaffirms the value of marriage in Matthew 19, chapter 3 to 9, when the religious leaders came to him with a question about divorce. Hebrew 13, verse 4 tells us that marriage bed, understood as the place of sexual relation in marriage, is undefiled and should be honored by all. So, if you look down in the New Testament in Matthew, Hebrews, Timothy, Titus, Revelation, you can see how the institution of marriage and the sexual relationship between a man and women in marriage is considered as something that is pure and undefiled. The Bible does not see marriage as an inferior state or a concession to human weakness, nor does it see the normal physical love within a relationship as impure. Now, the second part of this subtitle, which is Solomon's, the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. Now, why is the Song of Songs of Solomon? Now, you can see Solomon and his name being mentioned in this book, the Song of Songs, for almost 6 times. So we assume that the author or the speaker is Solomon. We learn that Solomon, the son of David, was one of the greatest kings of the ancient Israel. And it's said that, or it's believed that, it's Solomon who composed the Song of Songs. It's believed that he composed more than 1,005 songs, and the greatest of these songs were the Song of Solomon. Now, as mentioned before, some people could see this Song of Solomon as a lyrical poem, as a drama that proves true love wins between the young maiden and a simple country shepherd, even though Solomon tried to take the maiden for himself because he was a king. Now, this would mean that there are four main speakers or characters in this poem. You have Solomon, you have the young maiden who's called as the Shulamite, that's the name of their tribe, Shulamite, the young man, you have Solomon, the beloved, and you also have the chorus, the daughters of Jerusalem. So you have basically three characters. You have the young maiden, you have the young man, and you also have the chorus. The young maiden is often called as the Shulamite, and she is identified as a country girl from the Shunem tribe, a small agricultural, it's a small agricultural village, the name of a village in Lower Galilee, and that is why she's called as a Shulamite. And some translators suggest that she's one of Solomon's many wives. So it depends on the translation. The young man is often called as the beloved and is generally identified with Solomon. Now, for some translators, it is curious that God used Solomon to write this because in the big picture, he miserably failed the test of love and romance before. Now, believing that the Song of Solomon really is by Solomon, we are left with so many challenges and difficulties or unanswerable questions, such as what is the occasion upon which it was written, or who is this woman so passionately loved by this man who had almost 700 wives and 300 concubines. So we're not sure whether it's Solomon who actually wrote the Song of Songs. Perhaps the Song of Songs does not reflect Solomon's actual experience. It could be an experience of someone that Solomon knew, or it could be his wise analysis and his skillful presentation to glorify the romantic and sensual love. So anyway, the exact writer of the Song of Songs is not clear in both the translations, in the King James Version and the New International Version. Now, as you start off with the first line of the poem, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Now, right away, we are struck with two complementary truths regarding the love between the Shulamite and her beloved. First, even though it is even if you believe that it is Solomon who's writing the Song of Songs, this main speaker here is the Shulamite girl. So she starts off the poem with a very intense feeling, and this shows that the maiden is not weak or passive. Second, the young man is of course a leader and is respected in the then society. So this is undeniably a strong woman who happens to be talking about her love through the Song of Solomon. So we can see how strong she is, and we can also see how clear her emotion is for her beloved whom she loves. Next, yet we see that the young man occupies a place of leadership, and she does not initiate a kiss but asks that he might kiss her. So she is giving him a cue that she is sexually interested in him. So here you can see how, in a very surprising manner, the women of those days had the courage to stand up to a man who is a well-known leader of that time and tell him that she is interested in him. In both the translations, you can see the same process happening of how both the translations start off with the a very strong maiden who indirectly proposes to her beloved. The second line, for your love is better than wine. Now, to the maiden, the love of her beloved is much more refreshing and intoxicating than wine. She acknowledges the fact that she is deeply and passionately infatuated by this man. Now, the theme of sexual enjoyment and consummation can be seen throughout this poem, and the theme of commitment is central to that whole relationship. So, this is not a passing encounter, it's a total dedication, and she's hinting towards a permanent obligation here. Now, she goes on further to describe how much she loves him. Your name is ointment poured forth. The same line you can find in both the versions without much change in the meaning. In both the versions, they mean that this line expresses the respect and esteem the maiden had for the character and reputation of her beloved. When she says your name, the name represented much more than just the title by which her beloved was addressed. So obviously, we understand that her beloved was a man of character and reputation. So his name was like ointment poured forth. Uh, the difference in both these translations is that in the second translation, you can see instead of ointment, you can see perfume. But other than that, it's the same. And she says that the fragrance of his good character, his good deeds, his good reputation flows like um, ointment or perfume that has a good fragrance. Now, when she says that his name was perfume poured forth, she meant that his character was as refreshing and fragrant as a cologne. Now, this is the reason that the girls around the palace loved him. Not just because he looks good, but because he has a good personality. Now, this couple that we're talking about is obviously physically attracted to each other. Yet, the maiden talks about a deeper relationship because from the start, they are focused on each other's character and kindness towards each other. So, this shows that, or maybe Solomon would want to tell the readers that a wise woman chooses a man whom others see to be a man of character, which means her estimation of him is quite serious and goes deeper because it's the deep commitment that she's um, putting forth. So she talks about not falling in love, but here the maiden talks about building love. Therefore, the virgins love you. The maiden understands that others could see good character qualities in her beloved, and this draw me away. So, this was a logical desire of a woman to be taken away with the loving desire of her beloved. She wanted to be with him, so she tells him to take her away. And she's happy to know that the other virgins of her land loves him. Now, both the versions have the word virgin in it uh, because during that point of time when this poem was written, virginity was connected to land and a girl. Um, Virgins were considered pure and holy, so and quite innocent. So, if the virgins of the land loves a man, it means that that man is of character, of a good character. And then you have an interjection that comes here, and that is the daughters of Jerusalem. We will run after you. Now, the maiden calls upon all the other women of Jerusalem. The we of this verse is somewhat hard to identify because we're not sure who the Shulamite or the girl is addressing to. Now, in the King James Version, you have the line is the daughters of Jerusalem. And in the New Version, you have the daughters of Jerusalem. Now, the basic idea here is that the daughters of Jerusalem is looked upon as a chorus who observes and celebrates the love between the maiden and the young man. So basically, it is the chorus duty to shower respect and to celebrate the love between the maiden and the. Next, there's a twist happening here, and the maiden confesses that the king has brought me into his chambers. Now, this is another line that seems to reinforce the point that this is Solomon inviting the young maiden into his bedroom or the private rooms of his palace. So we can assume here that the maiden has gone to the palace because King Solomon, who is her beloved, has invited her. However, because it does not seem that their love is yet consummated, this reference to his chambers may be poetic or symbolic, or maybe it can also mean that he has welcomed her into his heart or the dark, secret corners of her heart. Yet, whichever meaning we would want to take, the king can refer or could refer to King Solomon himself. We will be glad and rejoice in you. We will remember you, your love more than wine. So again, we can here estimate that the we here could be the daughters of Jerusalem, who are actually wishing the couple good luck and blessing them and telling them that your love is much better than wine. Now, the next, and then with this, the maiden completes the chorus's blessing by saying that rightly do they love you. The maiden was so happy that the character of her beloved was good, that all the women around him loved him. So this well-reserved respect others had for the young man showed that the maiden made a wise choice. And this is something that women or a man who is eligible for marriage, when they choose a partner, Apostle Paul in Ephesians says that it is common for a woman to select a man for who he almost is. Now, this is much better than choosing a man and then making him what she wants, rather than choosing a man who is almost the same that she wants him to be. So, such a woman is called a wise woman in the Bible. And thus, the Shulamite feels that she is wise enough that she had made a good choice when it comes to her partner, her beloved, or King Solomon. Now, the last part of this poem, uh, there happens a twist wherein the Shulamite turns towards her own appearance, and suddenly she feels somewhat insecure here. She confesses that I am dark but lovely. Now, if you see in the new version, you can see that, sorry, in the King James version, it is I am black, and in the new international version, it is I am dark. Now, both the words refer to the color of the skin, of course, but there's a small difference here. Black could mean the skin of the race, and dark could mean that the sun has tanned the girl. Now, during that point of time, a girl who is fair, if a girl is fair, it shows that she's from a well off family, an elite family, because she has not tanned her skin dark by doing the outdoor activities. So, the more time she spends inside her home luxuriously, the more fair she becomes. So, this is the dark. I'm dark. When the Shulamite says that I'm dark, it has two meanings to it. One, that she's not from an elite family and her skin has been tanned by the sun because she has to work outside her home. So perhaps it's the best way to say that she saw herself as fundamentally lovely. So she also says that I am dark but lovely. So she is proud of her look because she feels that she is lovely and that her skin is just being tanned by the sun due to prolonged exposure to sun, transforming her from a fair skin to a darker or deeply tanned skin. So the difference in the two translations is one has the word black in it and the other has the word dark in it. Both refer to the color of the skin. Now, like the tents of Kedar. Now, Kedar was a territory southeast of Damascus where Bedouin tribes roamed. Their tents were made of skins of black goats. So, she compares her skin to the tents of Kedar. Now, in that day, as we said, the fair skin was considered more attractive than the tanned skin because it showed financial well off or financial stability. The fair skin was a sign of financial stability and high social status, whereas the tanned skin showed that they had to do a lot of work. Here, the manner in which the translators deal with the line, because the sun has tanned me, demonstrates the weakness of the primarily allegorical approach. Now, Trapp, an interpreter, discusses how some think that the sun represents the sun of righteousness. Now, this is the religious or the Christian version of being tanned by the sun, and how his brilliance or the Christ brilliance, and how in his brilliance the church sees his own nothingness. So the sun might represent the original sin, and he thinks that the best understanding is to see the sun as a heat of persecution and the parching of oppression. So she says that it is not I am dark and it is not my fault. It's the parching of oppression, or it is a sign of oppression or me being oppressed because I'm not financially stable. But I have a lovely character. That is what she's saying. And this is a very strong confession from a maiden who is not worried about her outer looks, but she promises a lovely character that she can put forth in the relationship. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of vineyards. So now she gives reasons as to why her skin has become tanned. Because her brothers or her mother's sons. Now, at that point of time, her mother's sons need not be her direct brothers, it could be her step brothers too. Because during that point of time, women and men had multiple relationships outside um, their marriage, because it was a time of war, it was a time of losing spouses. They had to roam about in the deserts, and a partner was not to stay or could not stay for a lifetime. So her mother's sons, her direct or indirect brothers, um, forced her, to work outside and look after their vineyards. So, she is looked upon as a Cinderella figure here, where she's been forced by her stepbrothers and cruel relatives to work, and this has tanned her skin. So, um, but with a lot of confidence, she says that she has natural attractiveness to her and a certain humility, which often only suffering can bring. So, no doubt, genuineness and humility were refreshing changes to the king, and that is what she has to offer him. And then she also confesses that she could not keep her own vineyard, but my own vineyard I have not kept. So she worked hard in this unjust labor, neglecting her own appearance. Now, in this, she well represents the thinking of many women who consider themselves not attractive enough to be truly and passionately loved. She believed that the hardships of her life actually made her attractive from inside rather than attractive from outside. And she also tells the daughters of Jerusalem that even though I am not attractive from outside, I've yet got the king, or I have yet got a man who has a beautiful character too. So here she assigns high value to the attributes of love, romance, which is connected to your inner being. Both the translation has the same meaning running through it. Towards the end of the poem, the last three lines, um, the beloved starts to talk back. And the sixth line, tell me, O you whom I love, where you feed your folk. So she asks her beloved, where can she come to see him or meet him? And of course, the picture of a shepherd is one reason why some think that the Song of Solomon is actually a drama, with a distinction between Solomon the king and the beloved, who is also a simple shepherd. So here there's a confusion created, because now we might feel that her beloved is a normal shepherd and the not King Solomon. For why should I be as one who veils herself? Now the maiden proclaims her modesty, because in their culture a veiled woman was a woman of low sexual morals, almost like a prostitute. Now she didn't want to look herself as someone who had a very low sexual moral, and she wanted to know where her beloved was. She did not want a man, she wanted her man, her special man, or her beloved. So this tells us how um, she presents herself as morally strong. Here, this the phrase or the story of the veiled of the veil In Genesis 38, verse 13 to 15, we see Tamar, the widow of the sons of Judah, who wanted to entrap or entice her father-in-law, Judah, by posing as a prostitute. So she covers herself with a veil wrapped around herself, and thus making herself available as a prostitute. So um this image is being used here by the Shulamite girl, and she says that I would not want to show myself as a veiled woman. And in their culture, a veiled woman, as I said before, was likely to be a prostitute. So, in this poem, the Shulamite girl shows that she is both humble, she has an integrity, and that her attraction and reputation um, is that of a pure and clean inner self. And the last um, verse that we have to go through, because the song does not end here, the last verse that we have is, if you do not know, O fairest among women, follow in the footsteps of the flock. So poetically here, for the first time, the beloved starts to talk, and the beloved tells his maiden where she can find him. So it's an answer to the previous verse, where can I find you? And he says, just walk or follow the sheep or the folks, and it will lead you to me. And again, this shows how the beloved is also interested. He welcomes her presence and companionship and is happy to have her with him. So basically, if you if you look through both the translations, apart from certain changes, you can see that um, the common thread that runs through both the translations are the same. Certain words are changed because of the temporal and the spatial differences,